Hello, and welcome to Beyond Bereavement, The Power of Planning. My name is Beatrice Tony Bailey, and I am your television host and the author of the book, Farewell, My Friend. Farewell, My Friend was written as a result of the many lessons I learned while taking care of my late husband. I found out during this very stressful time that it's not a matter of if a person's going to have to deal with these end-of-life issues, but when and who. Beyond Bereavement, The Power of Planning is a collaborative effort between the Interfaith Service Bureau and its television station, RCC TV, and Eastlawn Memorial Park. It's the desire of these organizations that Beyond Bereavement, The Power of Planning function as a platform for interactive discussions between the various faith communities. Won't you join us?
East Lawn has been serving families in the greater Sacramento area at the times of their greatest need for more than 100 years. Our counselors provide the support that people need. They know what to ask. They help you secure a lasting tribute for your loved one.
We're honored to have the privilege of helping your family during your time of need.
Now, today's episode is entitled Taking Care of the Caregiver. As I've pointed out during this television series, being a caregiver is both a wonderful experience, but it's one that comes with back-breaking responsibilities and expectations. It wasn't until I was conducting a series of lectures and presentations that I found out about resources that were available for the caregiver. During this episode, you will hear from two caregivers and two recognized professionals in the field of caregiving. Participating in this series are Michelle Nevins. Now, Michelle is Executive Director of Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center. You'll hear from Moira Fordyce. Moira Fordyce is an advocate with the California Coalition of Caregivers. Denise Hammond, who is a caregiver, took care of her daughter who had AIDS and also found out she was pregnant with twins. And we have Dolores Hassel, who was a caregiver for her husband. Now, Del Oro is one of the 11 California Caregiver Resource Centers serving the 13 Northern California counties. Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center is a private, nonprofit agency dedicated to serving families and people who are providing care for brain-impaired adults and the elderly who are frail. According to a 2003 study conducted by the National Family Caregiver Association, there are 3,184,776 caregivers in the state of California, or nearly 1 out of every 4, that's 25%, households is involved in a caregiving situation. Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center is here to assist caregivers in our community throughout their entire journey. The mission of the Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center is to improve the overall well-being of family caregivers throughout their journey. They provide services to families who are caring for someone with brain impairment, such as Alzheimer's, strokes, MS, or a traumatic brain injury that was acquired after the age of 18. Del Oro offers a comprehensive package of services including information and assessment, family consultation and care planning, counseling, education and training, respite care. This is giving the caregiver a much-needed break, support groups, and legal consultations. Now let's join this episode in progress.
I tried to get her to abort one of the children because she was pregnant with twins. And she said, well, now how do you decide which one to abort? Mm-hmm. And she said, well, Mom, I think I'm going to give it a try because I believe they're going to be all right. They're now 19. They were 9 when I got them. They've never had any trace of AIDS, and this is their 2nd year in college, and they're doing extremely well.
Wow. Is that a great story?
Oh,
great
yes.
story.
Oh,
Dr. Fordyce.
Moira Fordyce. I'm a geriatrician, a physician who has specialized in the care of the elderly. For more than 20 years, I did a sort of subspecialty of nursing home, hospice, and home care. I did home visits, and I took young doctors with me and young nurses and taught them how they could look after a patient at home, because not everyone can get into the hospital or the doctor's office. I've been a doctor since 1962, rather a long time. And now my main interest, my focus, is the California Coalition for Caregivers, and I hope to tell you a bit more about that. I may say I have been a caregiver myself. I was caregiver for my mother when she was terminally ill with cancer of the colon. The only thing was that was in Britain, where we had total support, where we have a health service, and I can tell you there's a huge difference caring for someone where all the medications are covered, all the equipment is covered, there's no paperwork. I tell you, it is very different.
It was interesting. I saw an article or read an article about, not that we're going to get into the healthcare thing. I think the bill's been passed, it's going to be passed, they're going to fight out in the Senate, whatever. But what I found out in Great Britain, the doctors receive their bonuses based upon how well their patients are. So you get a bonus if suddenly you have so many patients that have diabetes and their blood sugar level has dropped so many points. That's how you get your bonuses, not how many people you can bring in and get on medication. It's how many, what is the overall wellness of your population.
Correct.
That's a different concept than we have here in the
A lot
United
of
States.
preventive care.
Right.
Everything, yes.
Right, right. Thank
So
you. This woman?
I am Dolores Hassel, and I was a caregiver for my husband who died in 1994. He was diagnosed with glioblastoma. And
what is that?
It's a brain cancer. And he was diagnosed May 7th, well, not with brain cancer on, I'm sorry, not May 7th, on March 7th, because we hadn't got to that stage yet. But he was diagnosed on May 7th, and I'm sorry, March 7th, and passed away.
Okay, it's an M. May and March, you're okay.
Yes. He diagnosed March 7th and passed away on May 7th. So
the same year?
Same year, 2 months later.
Wow.
From the diagnosis to his death.
Wow.
And it was really, which we didn't know that's what it was in the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different kind of stressor. Denise, you had a stressor whereby your daughter had a prolonged illness.
12 years.
12 years, and bam,
yeah.
your husband was gone.
Which was really a shock.
It's hard to say which one is, and maybe we even get in that, which one is less traumatic. Both of them are traumatic, both of them are gone. But it'd be really interesting to kind of dialogue with that. Tell you a little bit about my story, because you know I'm going to tell you about my story. As a caregiver, I took care of my husband, and prior to taking care of him, I had never taken care of anyone who had been ill other than my children, Wendy and Rodney. I mean, the mumps, measles, chicken pox, you know, a rash or whatever. My son said he broke bones. I don't remember the bones being broken, but he played football, so it's probably broken bones and things of that sort. But that's the only thing I had, any experience I'd had in being a caregiver. So suddenly when my husband became ill, and that I had to learn how to be a caregiver. And of course I wrote the book, Farewell My Friend, which is a step-by-step guide taking you through the initial diagnosis of an illness all the way to the end, including the grieving and closure and things of that sort. So during this time, I mean, I've always been a type A personality. Not that anyone noticed that.
Nobody.
Okay, no one. It's one of the best. It's one of the worst kept secrets, probably. Okay, I'm a type A personality, so I'm a hard charger. You know, I'm this, I'm this. I love to be organized. You know, so I had this organized, that organized. I like my forms. I like this. I like this. Blah blah blah. And all of that it's fine. And I can remember when my beautician, I call her my stylist because she does my hair now for the show, so she's really my beautician, but my stylist, when I was going through this, she was telling me, she says, B, you can prepare all you want for this. You won't be ready when it happens.
Right.
And regardless of all the forms and documents I wasn't ready, you know, for it. And again, being the kind of person that I am, and also having that strong Midwest work ethic. I'm originally from Iowa. Everyone stands, my mother, every tub stands on its own bottom. You've got to be independent. You've got to do da, 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 da. So that was part of my family DNA. That's the way that I was conditioned. If we got sick as children, you go up, take your medicine, go upstairs, get better, come downstairs, and do your chores. So it wasn't any that oh, sweet, boochie. My mother didn't go to that school, you know. So it was, so consequently, when Rick got ill, it never dawned on me that there would be something like the resource center. It never dawned on me. It never dawned on me to ask for help. I mean, he's my husband, for better or for worse. I mean, I was retired at the time, so why did I need help? I did not know. I mean, I just didn't know about the stressors associated with the caregiver. During the time that I was Rick's caregiver, I lost 18 pounds. I ain't got 18 pounds to lose. I lost 18 pounds and this is my hair, 8 inches of my hair fell out at the top. And that's nothing but negative feedback regarding the stress that's in my body. During this time, the hospice personnel suggested that I do respite. And respite is when you go take a respite, you go away just for a little bit. And that, oh my gosh, the amount of grief and flack that I took from family and friends for taking that time off. How dare you leave your husband? He's dying, you're not, da-da-da-da-da. And what they didn't realize, while Rick was dying, part of me was also dying. People would blow in the door to go see him, go right past me, not that I wanted to be, you know, queen for the day, but most of them would blast right by me and go and see about him, yet and still I had the day-to-day responsibility associated with it. I knew nothing about this organization.
Yeah. And the other thing, the respite care is just crucially important. You have to get away, recreate, relax. You must. Otherwise, the stress will get you. And when I was doing hospice, my 20 years where I specialized in hospice care, I was very lucky because I had connections and I could have the person, the care recipient, have them maybe admitted to a very good nursing home for a few days, for a week, to let the caregiver have a rest. And like that, a lot of people reacted and said, oh, goodness sakes. But I knew, and my team knew, my group knew, that you needed respite. Otherwise, you get sick, what happens to him?
Well, you hear the expression, the caregiver is the first to go. Well, that's kind of a cute expression. Till you walk in the shoes of a caregiver. Right. Yeah. I mean, there was times I could not literally get out of bed. I was so exhausted because what happens when you're a caregiver, as you two can attest to, anyone that's been a caregiver, you're in a constant state of sleep deprivation. Yes. I could tell you how many times during the night that Rick raised his bed up, his bed went up and went down. What's he doing? Oh my God, he's up. He's up. What's he doing up? I'm upstairs, he's downstairs. You know, he's gone to the bathroom. Okay, he's there too. What is he doing? Okay, he's out of the bathroom. Why did he go in the kitchen? What's he doing in the kitchen? What's that noise? So you hear that all night long. So when I would take my respite, I'd go and I'd sleep for 12 hours. Now you can't sleep 12 hours unless you're exhausted. Absolutely exhausted.
That's why when I call you, I always say I'm checking on the sick and the shut-in.
She would. She would always call. She says, I'm checking on the sick and the shut-in because he's sick.
And you're shut in.
You know. And that, but again, she used humor, and humor is awfully. I mean, she even a sidebar. The day that Rick died, Denise is one of my closest friends. She and her husband came over. Her husband was one of Rick's closest friends. They came over right away. Boom, right away. They came over, and so we're waiting there for them to pick up Rick's body, and we're having tea. And Denise sits there, and she looks at this really pretty silk orchid plant that I have, and she sits there and she goes. Rick told me that he wanted me to have that plant. I said, he did. She said, yeah. She says, and those two really nice fabric chairs, he wants me to have them. And I look at her, I start laughing.
I had run out of things to say.
Right. And she said, and there's a new retro fan, real cute one, those little silver fans I had in the kitchen. She says, he wants me to have that too, you know. So, so she used humor, and we I said, Rick, she says, yeah, I think he wants me to have that, you know. Of course, afterwards they've done studies that caregivers have something called post-traumatic stress, because if you're like this, and all my
yeah.
time and all my energy and all my focus is on taking care of him, then bam, that goes. You've got this vacuum.
You have.
Right.
And if you imagine a piece of elastic that you stretch and you stretch and you stretch
It
and you
eventually
stretch,
breaks.
what happens when you let go?
Right, right.
It just,
Exactly.
And that's your
Yeah.
caregiver.
Right, and then you can get sick. You can do
Absolutely.
all this other stuff. So I'm sure you'll be able to
Yeah.
share those
but
stories.
you know, my biggest problem was I just didn't get any rest because after I would leave her, caring for her, she had those 2 children. So my husband would keep them when I was with her, but when I'd go home and they needed me, I had to take care of them also.
So you were on.
She didn't want any other caretaker. She didn't want anyone else to come in and care for her but me. So I did it. And there are times you just do what you have to do.
Right.
And I
right,
felt
yeah.
like I had to do it. So I did it.
Yeah.
And just before then, I had come out of 3 major health problems. My immune system had turned against me and my liver cirrhosis all the way to the point where the doctor had said, I've done all I can do. And then I got diabetes.
But you're still here.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you why I'm still here.
Okay.
And then I got diabetes, and then I got breast cancer.
Well, you just
And after breast cancer, one of the medications in the breast cancer from taking chemo attacked my liver. So I went through the liver thing all over again
Wow.
at the same time.
and you're taking care of your daughter and the grandkids.
Right. But the
Wow.
Lord saw fit
So you're a woman of faith.
to take all the way, to take care of the whole thing. And now I understand why he healed me. I don't use the word, are you in remission? I don't use that word. He healed me. And I understand why now. Those 2 children needed someone to take care of them.
And she's done a wonderful job. When the kids came to live with her, they had all kinds of different emotional problems. And these are 2 of the most locked down, straight kids that you can imagine. Denise and Aubrey he had just retired. They had all these retirement plans, and suddenly, blop, on their doorstep, 2 children. And that so they had to change all their retirement plans and whatever. And I admire both of you for having done that, because they're wonderful children. They're in the church. They've gotten scholarships. They had reading problems. They had all kinds. They were just, bless their hearts, they're all twisted and turned inside out. And it took both of them working with those children to get them to be the successful young adults that they are right now. So my hats off to
She
you.
got 14 scholarships.
Right.
And this is their second year in college,
Right.
and he got 12. Her major is nursing, and his is computer engineering, and they're doing extremely well.
And I always tease her grandson. He's really good looking, really tall. I always ask him, I says, you like old chicks? He goes, and he says, no. No.
Oh, God.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. It was a trip.
What was the most frustrating
But
thing?
it was, the most frustrating thing is I couldn't do anything about it. And you know, mothers think they can fix anything.
Right.
I could do, my most trying time was she was in the hospital and she was just moaning, and all at once she sits straight up and say, somebody help me.
Oh,
Somebody please help me. And I couldn't help her.
right. And you're a mother. That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I
Tears
just
you
started
apart.
running.
You start running, literally?
I just started running. I didn't know where I was going. I just started running. And the next day she told me, she said, I'll never do that again, Mom. I had no idea it would upset you that
Right,
way.
right.
And so after then, I had to be careful what I said.
Right.
And how I act.
But you're only human. I mean,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
only, it's not like, it's interesting. A lot of caregivers are really hard on themselves. How many kids have you lost before this?
None.
Right. How many husbands have I lost? How many have you lost?
None.
We don't, this is our first experience. So caregivers listening to me, stop being so tough on yourself. You're doing the best you can based upon the information that you have. But we're going to talk about different resources here that you have that are available to you. Now, Dee, tell us about your story.
Well,
and you look really cute today. She's one of those people who has so many clothes, she wears an outfit one time and throws them away. I've never seen the same thing twice.
No, I wear them over and over.
Oh, okay.
Well, my husband was never sick. He never had a headache or anything like that. So just one day he had spasms in his left hand. So we went to see the doctor. So the doctor had him set up to go have a CT scan done. And so then one day he had a really bad spasm. And so I was scheduled also to have surgery on my foot. I had a bunionectomy on my left foot. So he told me, well, you know, just go ahead and have the surgery done and I'll take care of you. So I said, okay. Because he had retired, you know, he told me to retire, so I did. I was happy to.
So, did he cook? Did he cook?
Oh, yes, he was an excellent
retired and
cook.
cook. Ooh.
Yes, and we would...
A little bit of heaven.
Yeah, and, you know, we just did a lot of things, you know, as a couple. My middle son was in college at that time at UC Berkeley. My youngest son was 17 in high school, about to graduate. He was a senior. And so I had surgery on a Thursday, and I noticed that Saturday, and he was in the kitchen cooking. Smooth food, smelled really good. And he walked past me, and I noticed he was limping. So I had asked him, you know, well, what happened, you know, to your leg? So he said, I don't know. He said it felt kind of weak. So I'm thinking in my mind, well, he may have had a little stroke. So we called his doctor that Monday morning. So the doctor had us to come in, and I was on crutches. My left foot was bandaged, and they had did surgery on my right toe. So that was bandaged. So
you're hobbled up? Yeah,
I'm all hobbled up. So we were going to the doctor's office, and I remember he kept writing on the buttons, you know, in the road. And I asked him, I says, why are you writing on the buttons? So he said, I don't know. So we got out to Kaiser and stuff. So I was in the wheel. So he got a wheelchair for me, and he was pushing me, but he kept pushing me into the wall.
Really?
And I asked him, I said, why are you pushing? I said, honey, you're pushing me into the wall. So he said, oh, I'm sorry. You know, he says, I didn't see it. And, you know, that really bothered me because I'm thinking, oh, something is really wrong. So we went to see the neurologist. She sent him immediately to have a CT scan done. We went and did the CT scan. And so we were supposed to bring the medical records, well, the scan back up to the doctor's office. Well, after that, they put him in a wheelchair. So they pushed both of us up to the doctor's office. And then they called her and told her that he had multiple brain tumors.
Wow.
And she asked him, did he ever have a headache?
They told you on the spot?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. After we got back into the neurologist, her office, and she asked him, did he have headaches? And he said no. So she looked at me. I told her, no, he never had a headache. And so she said, well, Mr. Hassel, you have multiple brain tumors. You have 3 on each side. There was one really big one. And so she said at that time that they couldn't do, so we asked, well, you know, what about radiation or surgery? She said no, because there were too many. And this was back in 1994. And so she said that they couldn't do radiation because it was too many. So she told me right there, she says, Mrs. Hassel, your husband is going to die, so you just need to, you know, get prepared. And I'm thinking,
that's a wonderful, you know, bedside manner.
My goodness, you know. And I told her, I says, you don't know what you're talking about. So we left, and so she said, well, you're going to have to drive home because he cannot drive.
But your feet?
Yeah. So here it is. I'm bandaged up. So they helped us get to the car and everything. And so luckily on my right, my driving foot, it was just the little toe. So I had to drive us home. And so at that point, you know, he was still able to walk. And this was a man that, you know, did a lot of things. And so we went inside. He immediately went to the bedroom. And so, you know, I told him, I said, to encourage him, I said, well, you know, we're going to do everything, you know, that we can and everything. So we talked to our regular doctor. So he said, okay, he said, you know, we'll run some tests and all that, you know, to find out if he has cancer in his lower body. So they did that, could find no cancer. And so my husband decided, well, he wanted to have a biopsy done, you know. And so, well, I didn't want him to do that, but he, you know, was insisting upon it. So we went and talked to the surgeon. So they, you know, set up everything. But in the meantime, the next day after the diagnosis, his whole body, it seemed, his whole left side went into spasms. And so I was in so much pain, you know, and I'm taking pain pills and stuff. So in the middle of the night, you know, I noticed he was, you know, in spasms and stuff. So then that meant that he was awake the rest of the night in spasms, and so was I. My son at that time was 17. Well, he was working and going to school. And so the next morning, we could not get him up out of bed. So I told my son, well, just go ahead and leave. And I went into the garage, and I cried my heart out. And I prayed, you know. And
Did you go and cry because you didn't want him to see you cry?
Yes. And so I asked the Lord to, you know, to help me to be a help to him, you know, so that, you know, we can get through this. So I went back in, and so I called the doctor's office. So she said, okay, bring him in, and they would give him a bolster shot, I guess, to reduce the swelling in the brain because that was causing the spasms. So I took him in, and so they did that. Well, then he was able to walk and stuff. But then a week later, he was in a wheelchair. And so, you know, it was just downhill from there. But we didn't really have time to, you know, talk or to do a lot of different things because, you know, I was so busy taking care of him, you know, having to do the cooking and bathing him and then changing the sheets on the bed.
What kind of support did you have? Did you have any support?
I didn't have any because...
Were you Wonder Woman?
Well, I thought I was because I had always taken care of my husband and my kids, you know, and did everything. Well, family members would help out, but he didn't want them to bathe him or change his bed. He would always say, oh, well, Lois, well, he called me Lois. My name's Dolores, but he called me Lois. He said, well, Lois would do that. Lois would do that.
Is that typical? Is that typical?
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, so he didn't want anyone to do anything, and I was so exhausted and in so much pain, and so at first I had, well, the doctor, you know, sent out a hospital bed and all that stuff. Well, I had him in the family room. So he didn't like that because, you know, when people, you know, would come over, they'd see him in bed. So we took the bed out of the bedroom that I slept in and put the hospital bed in. So then I would sleep on the couch at night, which was, you know, not too far from the master bedroom. And so it'd be in so much pain by the end of the night, my foot would throb. And I had to go back to the doctor because the pen was messing up because I, you know, had to be on my feet all the time.
Right.
So I had to go back and I explained to the doctor what was going on. So he said, well, you know, you need to be off your feet. I told him, I said, I can't.
Right.
I can't be off my feet because I have to take care of him. So my, you know, youngest son would help, you know, lift him up, you know, and things like that. Then we had a physical therapist that would come in. So the doctors wanted me to put him in hospice, but I thought, well, you know, we want to find, you know, a cure for this. I mean, you know, something could be done. And he didn't want to be put in hospice. And so I had the son at home, one at college. My oldest son lived in Sacramento. I had 3 stepsons.
Because you were down south.
Yeah, we were down south. 2 stepsons lived in Sacramento. One lived in Laguna Niguel, which was about 60 miles from us, but no one came to help us. And so it was just, and he didn't want...
Why do you think that is? It's because they didn't want to help? Or you find that people are afraid, they don't know what to do?
They're afraid, and they also don't think of it. They don't realize what you were saying what you're going through.
Right. So when my stepsons finally came down one weekend, and I told them, I said, no, they came down on a Friday, so they helped me take him to the doctor for a test, and they had to literally hold him up, you know, while I put his pants on and stuff like that, and they told me, they said, I don't know how you and David do this. He says, man, he said, we couldn't do this every day. And I told him, I said, well, somebody's got to take care of him. You know, and so David was my youngest son, and bless his heart, he would go and lift his dad up out of bed all the time, where he ended up hurting his back. And so, you know, it was just an exhausting time. And there were times that he didn't appreciate, you know,
he wasn't always sweet and loving to you?
No, because if I
call you precious apple dumplings.
Well, I know that he loved me, and then he would and then I had a granddaughter, 6-year-old granddaughter living with me at that time too, and so sometimes my husband would lash out at my son if he didn't do what he wanted him to do right away. And then my son would come to me, Mom, Dad is being mean. I said, no, it's just the sickness. He's not, you know, so I always had to make excuses. And
but
then,
it hurt.
And then when he would lash out at me, you know, I'd have to remember, okay, this is the sickness and stuff. And then if he said something, and then I would say, well, I'm doing the best I can. He said, yeah, you never let me forget it. And I'm thinking, I never said that, you know, and it made me feel guilty. So, you know, I felt bad all the time. And so
Did you think about going to any caregivers? Because I didn't think about going to a caregiver support group. Why would I do that?
No.
Because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because I don't know any. I didn't know
Well,
about
I didn't
you.
have time
If I
to
knew
go.
about you guys, I'd be your poster child. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be there all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I still can be, right?
But that's one of the problems, that caregivers often do not self-identify.
Right.
They don't think of, I'm a caregiver.
Right.
Therefore,
No,
they
I'm
don't
just
even
taking
think
care
of
my husband.
looking for help.
Right.
They just think, I'm a family member, I'm doing
Yeah.
what a good family member does. So to get the word out to caregivers, you are a caregiver, you are an unsung hero, you're doing great things, how can we help? I mean, that step, that piece is missing
It is.
in so many cases.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Do you want to add something, Michelle?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we see quite often is the isolation that goes along with
Isolation's a
caregiving,
good word.
because
Yes,
they
yes.
don't know about places that might be of help. So they tend to forget about their doctor's appointments, going to church, all these different things that are part of their daily routine. And then the isolation sets in, and they have no one to talk to, no one to turn to. Their friends don't understand often.
And plus, you seem like a whiner. I'm going to go, well, I'm so tired of taking. Well, better, but he'd take care of you. I don't know why. It's just.
And he's the one that's dying, not you.
Right.
But a part of me was because,
Absolutely.
this was a man I had retired, and we had planned to do a lot of things
Right,
together once
right.
my son, finished school and all that, and
Right.
we got him off to college, and we were going to move from Southern California up near Berkeley, to be close to the boys, and it was just really hard, and so
Absolutely.
lots
of dreams, and then you have to. I mean, I was 60 when Rick. So don't do the math.
I was 48.
Yeah, right. Well, you're a baby. You're a
Yeah,
baby.
I
You're
was
48,
48
and
and
that.
a half.
So here at 48, me at 60, we had to reinvent ourselves.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't expect to be doing this.
But when you
Right.
stand before the preacher and he say in sickness and
Right.
in
Right,
health,
right.
you have no idea that that's ever going to happen.
But
Are
you-
you going to need it?
You're going to have to read the small print.
Right.
That's
right.
right.
Sickness and health, but read, because one of you is going to get really sick,
Yeah.
And it is the fine print that gets you,
Yeah.
and again the social understandings or misunderstanding with regard to a caregiver, because you don't want to be a whiner. I mean, to sit and complain to
Right,
people,
right.
but and you have to have some kind of a way to voice your concern. This is where you come in.
That's exactly correct. One of the things that we do on a daily basis is we have family consultants that work with our caregivers, and we are there to support the caregiver, not the care receiver, the caregiver, and that is our main goal. And we do that by listening, by encouraging, by offering support, ideas, suggestions. We develop a care plan together so that they can feel like someone really cares about them. And it makes their job a little bit easier to know that, gee, I can call, Ann on Tuesday and let her know that I had a really awful weekend. And
To
get
have
some
a
ideas.
safe outlet, because you can't tell your business just to anybody.
Right.
You have to have a safe outlet where I can go. In my book, I talk about it's important for you to have a scream buddy, and Denise was one of the many scream buddies that I have. Someone that I could go and I can just scream and say, he's sick, but he's killing me. I'm just so tired of this. I can't stand it. And she doesn't pass judgment on me. She'll listen. She says, you're having a tough day. What you're going through is a lot. You're doing a good job, B. And that, tell you what, let me bring something over. Because, I mean, I'd lost all this weight, 18 pounds during this
I did
time.
too.
But I had friends that would cook for me. I said, no, I'm fine. You have to cook. But if they brought food over, guess what? I would eat the food, But just to get a card, a letter, or whatever, you need to find a couple of people that you can trust with your business. And that's important.
Right.
And a person of faith, hopefully real faith, and that you absolutely can get a word of encouragement to, and not feel that you're a loser for doing so.
Right.
But the word AIDS,
Scares everybody.
nobody came
Right,
to
that's a good point.
visit. Nobody said, well, okay, we'll relieve you for 2 hours.
No,
then.
that's
Yeah, a whole nother kind
Nobody.
of isolation.
So you know
That's
what?
right.
I got to the point where I didn't expect it, and it made me handle it a lot better. I didn't expect anybody to come by.
Well, yeah, then you were smart to lower your expectations
Right.
and not to be in a constant state of frustration.
That's
And I
right.
think it's important that when there are situations like that, there's other things that people can do to directly help you. Maybe they can go grocery shopping for you,
Right.
pick up your medication, mow your lawn, clean your bathroom.
Yes.
Take
That
the
may
kids.
not
Take the
be-
kids to the
yep,
movies.
Exactly.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But
And
they
people need
didn't.
to be educated.
Right. They do.
Because I mean, a lot of people would help if they knew what to do.
Right.
But they don't know what to do, they don't know what to say.
Right.
Right. If there's anything you need, let me know.
And then you never hear from them again.
Yeah, that doesn't work, does
No.
it?
The caregiver
you
needs
don't.
to be direct
Right,
in asking.
and see, and that is important.
That's
You as if, because one of these days I'll go over to help you. One of these days is none of these days. You go, I'll be over there Monday. I'll be over there. I'll have my headscarf turned on backwards. You tell me what I need to clean. I'll be
Yes,
over there with my
right.
car. Have your grocery list ready. But you have to take control of the situation as a caregiver and also as a friend of the caregiver. Because I can remember when Debbie Wilson, who goes to my church, she says, well, I'm going to cook something. I says, no, Debbie, it's fine. Well, she's as strong a personality as I am. She's a little sweeter than I am, but she's a strong, I call her happy Debbie Wilson.
Yeah.
But she is a strong person. She says, no, I am coming over and I am bringing food. And she brought all this wonderful food. And it was wonderful, because first of all, I felt loved. I felt that I was being taken care of, and I had to learn to accept it. I can remember on 2 occasions with the stress, I was admitted to the hospital because they thought I was having a heart attack.
Yes.
And the doctor in question said, when he came and did the exams and all that, he says, I am not concerned about your heart. Your heart is strong. I'm concerned about your spirit.
Yes.
You cannot be at your husband's every beck and call.
Yes.
It is killing you.
That's right.
right.
Emotional
Yeah.
exhaustion is real.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
caregiver burden. The health effects of the isolated, the caregiver who doesn't get help. There are more heart attacks, there's more headaches, there's more upset digestion. That's physical.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
mental effects, there's more depression in the isolated caregiver.
Right.
There's emotional burden, this where you're wiped out, you're feeling a whole conflict of emotions, your anger, your guilt, your
Right,
worry.
right,
your,
right.
That's what's so hard. It's not just one thing. And it's real. And we can look, we can measure the immune system, we can look at the cells and say, yeah, your immune system is depressed, your wound healing is less.
Right, right.
And it's the isolated caregiver.
That's
We can
right.
prevent this happening if we help.
Now, what do you do specifically as an advocate for the California Coalition of Caregivers?
Yes.
There you There you
Yeah,
go.
right. California Coalition for Caregivers is an organization that is trying to become a voice for the caregivers in California. And it's difficult because it's a big state. And what happened was in June 2004, AARP Foundation and the U.S. Administration on Aging gave a 2-day training of how to set up a coalition. And the point about the coalition is we have 18 members. That's the inner sort of coordinating council. And a member would be a group like Caregiver Resource Centers. It would be a group like Alzheimer's Association. It would be American Society on Aging, Family Caregiver Alliance. Now, all of these are groups that in some way help caregivers. And what we want to do is bring them together, share expertise. Don't, you're out there in your little silo, you're doing great stuff, and you are. But, Alzheimer's is over here, they're doing great stuff. Share, come together. So, educate. What we want to do, we say that CCC, California Coalition for Caregivers, has a great idea. And the ID is help caregivers self-identify. ID. And I actually have a slide that shows this. CCC has a great idea. The E is for educate caregivers and others. We need to educate employers. We need to educate family members. We need to educate legislators and their staff. The A is advocate. Advocate for caregivers and try and help caregivers to learn how to be their own advocates. And I mean, I know you haven't time, but there are ways in which, for example, Alzheimer's Association has got a virtual visit program set up. And what would happen
What
there?
is the virtual visit? What is that?
What happens is you need to go into the website, into the Alzheimer's Organization website. You can click on a link and it will show you how to write a letter that expresses your experience. It goes to the headquarters of Alzheimer's in Washington, And when people like myself go to advocate, go to the legislators, we they print out, you know, the letter you have sent, and we take a stack of these to the legislator, to the staff, and say, these are real people. Now, one of the problems about caregivers doing a lot for themselves in terms of advocacy is you don't have the time. But with this kind of thing, the virtual visit, your voice can be heard. So what we have been doing, the California Coalition for Caregivers, we visit legislative staff. We come to Sacramento, we take time, and we go and talk to them. We tell them about the caregivers. We tell them that 1.8 million California households are involved in caregiving.
Wow.
And this slide shows that. There are 3.2 million Californians who are family, informal, unpaid caregivers. The facts are the dollar cost, what you are doing, caregivers. If the nation had to pay, the whole nation, it would cost $306 billion annually in the United States. Free care you are given.
And I think the caregiver doesn't always, they don't, or other people do not put value on what they're doing.
That's right.
Because you can't hire 20, do the math, try to hire someone out 24 hours to take care of someone.
Right.
Run the numbers on that.
Exactly. And it's $45 billion a year in California. If you just stopped doing what you were doing, that's what it would cost. So do you see how, of what value you are above boobies, above pearls?
I think that's the key, what you're saying, that people need to learn to value the caregiver.
Right. And also to regard the caregiver as an investment. And this is particularly the caregiver in the workforce. You know, the employer maybe thinks, oh darn, they're going to take time off, oh dear, you know, this is... But the caregiver who does a good job is a wonderful employee and is valuable. And to think in terms of investing in that caregiver, I'm happy to say that a number of firms now have set up emergency support teams for their working caregivers, where if the person who was supposed to come and look after your person doesn't show up, there's someone you can call. So things are changing.
Oh, good.
But anyway, the advocacy piece, we go and we talk to, it's mostly the legislative staff we get to talk to rather than the actual legislator. But the wonderful thing is you can do advocacy at a local level, and I've done that myself. I've met with Jerry Hill, my assembly person. I've met with Senator Leland Yee. The trouble is I'm preaching to the choir. They know about this. They care. So what we, California Coalition for Caregivers, try to do is go to Sacramento and try to target, let's say, a moderate Republican who might vote against the cuts that have recently happened. So we go and we try to educate them. So that's, you know, the advocacy piece.
Is there anything else anyone wants to add?
The one thing I will say about that is Dr. Fordyce and I could go to the Capitol every day of the week and talk to the legislators, but they really want to hear from the caregivers, the people that are doing it, what your experience has been. That's invaluable for them to hear. That's how changes are made. That's how programs like ours started a long time ago.
Wonderful programs.
Well, you know, with being a caregiver, my husband had to take care of me when I was so ill. So he gave me something to go on how well he took care of me. And there was a point in there where he said, I heard him on the phone telling the pastor, I think I'm going to lose her. And then I said to sit up. I said, oh no. As sure as I die, there'll be a sale at Macy's and I will miss it.
Right.
And I was sure. I said,
She's a professional shopper.
No.
Well, and we used to laugh and talk because her husband's a very distinguished, very good-looking man. And she says, you know what? If I die, I know there's going to be ladies in the church who are going to snap them up. She says, I got to get better. Got to get better. They're going to snap them up. They're going to snap them up.
No.
But one thing that I wanted to say too, by my being so young, I didn't know about all the different help, you know, that was available. And because we didn't go into hospice, you know, we didn't accept hospice right then because my husband didn't want to. Because
how was your husband at the time?
He was 54.
Yeah, but see, that's young. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
And so we really didn't want to accept death because I had no idea that within, 60 days he was going to be gone. And then on top of that, we had no health insurance because he had retired, and then he had applied for, no, not health insurance, life insurance. He had just applied for life insurance and had gotten the forms to fill out when he was diagnosed with the brain tumors. So we knew then that, he would not be able to. And then I wasn't working. And so, we were more or less trying to get him better. And I felt bad because I couldn't get him better. And then we had, these boys that, needed him also,
how did they handle it? How did the boys handle it?
Well,
because different kids do different.
Yeah,
do
they
different
kept telling
things.
me, well, we're okay, Mom, we're okay. Now these are my two youngest because the other boys, my three stepsons were in their 30s at that time. And I had the one son that was 17. The other son was 19 and a half. And he was in his second year at Berkeley. And then my other son was 26. And so the younger boys, because the youngest one was there with his dad and saw him go through all that. But my husband didn't want me to tell the son that was away at school what was going on. In fact, he didn't want me to tell the boys, period. But I did tell the older ones after about 3 or 4 weeks what was going on. And so the one that was away at school didn't know until 2 weeks before his dad died. So
Was he resentful of that?
no, I flew him home, and he was there with his dad. Well, after the biopsy, the doctor came out and told us that it was glioblastoma, and he said he would be gone in a matter of weeks. And then he said, well, he would lose his ability to speak. He said he would know what he wanted to say, but he wouldn't be able to, I guess express it.
And
So then
was
I
that
was
frustrating?
becoming his voice.
Was that very frustrating to him?
Yes,
Yeah, I would
to
think so.
him and for me, because then I would have to try to decipher what it is that he was, wanted to say. So then he said, well, he would be able to write it. He said, but then after a while, the writing would become scribbled. And so, everything he said actually happened. He had the biopsy on the 18th of April. He came home, I think, on the 23rd, because the doctor felt that, well, if he's at home, maybe he will eat. Because he wouldn't eat in the hospital. Well, during that time,
You don't want to really eat that food in the
yeah,
hospital.
I had lost about 15 pounds. My hair was falling out, and so my sisters and all those thought I was anorexic because I gotten so skinny. But then the boys were okay, so I thought. But then after he died, they really went. After a few months, the son that was away at school had a nervous breakdown at school because then he realized, okay, my dad is never going to come back.
Right.
And then
There is
the
a delayed
youngest
reaction.
school,
There is. I mean, when you lose someone like that.
Oh yeah.
Rick had lost 100 pounds, and I definitely expected him to die. I mean, he lost 100 pounds. I mean, come on, he had lung cancer. He had a tumor in his lungs the size of a deck of cards. I expected to lose him, but I didn't expect him to go away. It's a difference. I mean, they're going to die, but okay, he's dead, but I mean, all right, it's Christmas. Don't I go down to Lodi and we have coffee or something? Or maybe, don't those people get time off for good behavior? I mean, they must,
Right.
And he'll go to one of Punkin's football games, right? Well, at least I'll be able to see him for Valentine's Day or our anniversary. They're gone.
Right.
And to try to get your head around that concept.
Right.
I mean, like, I used to, after Rick died, and that I'd go to the mailbox. He was a brainiac. He really was a terribly smart man. And there would be the Smithsonian. He loved anything to do with Egypt. So there'd be a picture of King Tut on the front. I'd go, oh, let me go. He's not there.
Right,
If I was
right.
cooking, well, the few times I did cook, I go, ooh, this is pretty good. Let me dish up. He's not there.
Right,
And I wrote a
right.
book, Farewell, My Friend, about life and death and, preparing and being proactive, blah, blah, blah. Who's the one person I want to discuss it with?
With you,
It's
yeah.
about you,
Right.
and you died.
Right.
So it is a hard concept, and I had to really grapple with that particular concept. It took me
Right.
a year really to
Oh,
understand
yes.
he's not coming through. And even, I think it was last year, year before last, he was gone 2 years, and I was talking to my neighbor and a gray truck, he had a gray crew cab truck, a gray truck, very much so like his, came into the driveway, and both of us gasped. I mean, come on, I buried him down in Gustine. You were there. You know, I buried him, but we both jumped, you know, at the same time because it was too much of a reminder.
Well, you know, what you're saying about grieving and working your way through a full year. I mean, anyone who's experienced this or has worked with people knows that it is a full year as you go through the various holidays.
The very first, get through your first.
Absolutely. The trouble is there's a big classification of all the mental diseases, the DSM-4, and in that classification of mental disorders, they do mention grieving, and this is consulted by doctors and nurses and whatever. But they say, oh, 3 months. Now, that is shocking. I mean, it's the medical profession is so unaware.
You didn't lose your keys or misplace your purse.
No.
You didn't get a run on your nylons. No. I mean, it's a little serious and more serious than that.
Exactly. And that is shocking to discover that. And the other thing is, I know you're going to do something about hospice, but hospice is dynamic.
Oh, it is.
It's not negative. It's one of the most positive things in which I've ever been involved, where everyone is working to make things as good as possible before, during death, and after.
Right.
You know, listening to everybody, it's amazing. I made sure that both children, they were 9 when we got them, they went through grievance counseling.
Smart.
And everybody got, I forgot about me, that maybe I needed it too.
Well, remember, I taught that course. Grief Share is a wonderful course. It's a 13-week course that's biblically based, that takes you through the various stages of grief. And Denise attended a couple of sessions, and your daughter had been dead for several years, and she went to 2 or 3 sessions. She said, you know what, I can't do this. And she and I are friends, and whatever. And I tried to make it, interesting. She says, I can't do this. There's still stuff inside me. Those years later.
That's right. And Devon had the boy twin. Had trouble in school. He had an anger problem. He was very close to his mother. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take you to the doctor to see if there's anything physically wrong with you. And if they said no, then I'm taking you to a psychiatrist and see if anything's mentally wrong with you. And if they say no, I'm going to bring you home and whip your butt. And that's exactly what I did. And slowly, every year, things got better, things got better, things got better. You couldn't meet a better person.
Oh, he's wonderful. But he doesn't like old women. He doesn't like old women.
No, he had to. I'm not sure he liked young women. He said he's too busy.
He is busy.
Yeah, too busy trying to get to where you want to be.
That's good.
And then too, I mean, sometimes, that stuff stays with you for years and years, because even though it's been 15 years, I still feel it at times,
Life's
so it doesn't go,
again.
no.
It isn't.
When you lose someone, it's never the same again.
It's trying to find a new normal. I mean, and there's different times. I have an interesting life, and I travel around the world, and I'm running around doing my book thing, and have a little television show, and all this stuff. But there's times that, like, for instance, I've gone to my grandson's football game, and I'll be sitting there with my daughter-in-law, both the grandsons, because the other one's on the field, and my son is coaching. I'm used to having my husband there doing the filming or whatever, and sometimes I get so unbelievably lonely and sad because even though we're not there talking during the game, I'm trying to talk to the game. He's telling me to be quiet because he's filming, but he's there. I can look at him and get him a soda or whatever. But there's times just an unbelievable sadness will come over me, because I miss him, and it's been 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
And you almost have to relearn how to be happy, allow yourself to be happy, even although the person's no longer there.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're not there just holding their hands and rubbing their hands and whispering. There's work to being a caregiver.
Oh, there is.
Especially if
it's
the worst thing that ever happened to me. I think I have bought every rubber glove in Sacramento. And one day she called me and said, Mom, I need you to come over and change my bed. I said, okay. Because whenever she called, I stop whatever I'm doing, I go right there. And I couldn't get, she couldn't move. So I said, you've got to stand so I can change these sheets. She said, but I can't. I said, yes, you can. Just stand up. She stood. I'll never forget this. Everything in her body came out.
Oh.
All this blood. And what in the world is this? But I knew I couldn't react. I knew I couldn't.
Right.
So I talked to the nurse that come around during the day, and I said, well, she said, well, honey, she has about 1 more week. And I said, I just can't do this anymore. She said, well, then I'll help you. So she moved her into a hospice house for AIDS people. And after she moved her in, and I paid for 2 weeks, she died in 3 days. They gave me all my money back. Up to the, I couldn't believe it. And she was most worried. There was a door that leave her room onto the street. She said, does that door lock? And they say, well, yeah. She said, that door must lock. I don't want anybody coming in here. And I said, really? So her mind was still working the same way. But it's, we don't give caretakers the right amount of whatever it is they need.
Support.
Because it is really something. You do more than care.
Right.
You do more than care.
And what we want, the message that we want to leave to our caregivers is the fact that reach out for help. You found out there's some wonderful resources that are there. Get yourself a scream buddy, someone that you can scream with, scream at, cry with, or whatever. And stop being so hard on yourself. I mean, you're doing the best you can based upon what you can, what you have and what you know. And that ask for support, explain what's going on with your children. And family members, when you are sitting there and dealing with a caregiver, stop what you're doing with your little busyness and that, and see what you can actually go over and do. And even if the caregiver says no, 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 still make a point to go over and to reach out and to help that individual. They will appreciate it and you'll feel really good. I want to thank our guests so much for coming in. You guys are wonderful, and I think I've enjoyed you.
These ones are wonderful.
Yes,
these ones.
Here for the caregiver, and here to you to be an advocate for caregivers and your organization.
My group will do what we can.
Right.
You believe me.
Right.
AARP is behind us. They have helped us so much.
This is wonderful. We want to thank you so much for joining us, and make sure that you tune into our next episode. Our next episode is on hospice. Hospice, when I went back to Iowa and gave a presentation at the Clarissa Cook Hospice residential facility. I'd never been at a residential facility. It's wonderful. They have on the wall inscribed a wonderful saying which really had impact to me. It says, hospice adds life to your days when no more days can be added to your life. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye and peace.